Now, I started the case just like any other case. I conducted my pre-surveillance intel gathering. I had the subject's current vehicle, make and model, and the plate. I had multiple photos of the subject. I had photos and vehicles of the subject's boyfriend. I was ready to go. A couple of days prior to the scheduled surveillance, I headed out on my pre-surveillance trip. I had looked up the address on the old internet and I found little to no information. The location was so remote that no sites had any photos of it, and the satellite photos were very dated and hard to make anything out on. According to the county assessor's site, it appeared there was a mobile home park there along with some other structures, possibly houses. It was very difficult to discern what I was going to find there, so I figured I better do some pre-surveillance recon. On my pre-surveillance run, I get about 10 miles from the location and boom, cell phone signal has dropped. That's okay though, I'm one of those weird guys. I have a regular GPS unit out in my car for just such an occasion. I do a lot of rural and mountain surveillance, and many times a cell phone is not reliable for GPS, so you need one of these regular GPS units. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Now, my trusty GPS unit gets me there despite the winding, hilly, narrow dirt roads. Yes, dirt roads, not gravel roads, dirt roads. If we get heavy rain, I know I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. These roads will turn to mud very quickly. Now, I come up over that last big hill. I'm about a mile away from the residence at this point. I am also about 3 miles past the last side road, so there are problems with this setup to be sure. Luckily for me, my cell phone had regained some service, and I had 1 bar of service on the phone, but at least I had something. I really do not like not having phone service, folks. I look at my cell phone as one of my lifelines while I'm out there. It is really important to have on these rural surveillances as well for process serves. You need a way to call for help if you need to call for help. As I approach the residence, I see it's a little community way out there in the middle of nowhere all by itself. There were about 24 mobile homes and a few regular houses along with a few ranches in the area. I decided to just drive right through on the main road like I was passing by and hope that I could spot the subject's residence. As I was driving by, I saw her mobile home and I saw her known vehicle. I was so happy. At least I had that going for me. Now, I had to come up with a plan to conduct surveillance. When I got back to the office, I reached out to the client to see if we could use 2 gators due to the remote location. Their response was less than exciting, to say the least. Sorry, John. Let's see what we can do with 1 and go from there. Not the first time I've had that response. It's time to make a plan. I looked over my photos and my video from the day of recon, and I identified a location about 10 miles away from the residence where I could sit and wait for her if she ever left the area. A nice thing about most of these rural cases is that the subject usually has limited options for going anywhere, so I can usually find a good place to sit and wait. The bad thing about this is, well, usually you stick out like a sore thumb just sitting there in the middle of nowhere, so you better have a good guise. Day 1 of surveillance rolls around. I head out. I decided to just get to that hilltop about a mile away and see if I could spot her vehicle at the residence with binoculars. When I get there, voila, I can see her vehicle and beside it what I believe to be her boyfriend's vehicle. I am good to go. I grabbed a little bit of video of the vehicles and then I head back to my stationary position. There I used my road survey disguise for this case. This is where I use a magnetic yellow light that I stick up on top of my car, and I have some magnetic signs that say road survey that I put on the sides of my car. I also put on an orange vest, and I have a good clipboard that I leave laying on my dash. All in all, as far as surveillance goes, these are pretty nice. It beats sitting in a neighborhood all hunkered down and hiding in your car. From my stationary location, I could see about a half mile up the road, so I hoped that I would be able to identify her vehicle when it approached. A few hours go by. Here comes a car that looks like it might be hers. I get all ready to go, and there she goes right past me. Not good. She saw my vehicle, but at least I knew it was her. I grab all of my stuff, and then away I go. Having to take off the guy's equipment so it doesn't blow off at high speeds going down the road cost me about 30 seconds of time, and she seemed to be in a hurry. I followed her at a distance, but was never able to catch up. She drove into town, and then I lost visual contact with her. Day 2 rolls around, and this time, since I had an idea of when she might leave, I decided to set up on a crossroad a ways back where I didn't have to use as much of my guys on my vehicle. I was hoping I would see her in time that I could do an intercept and come in behind her after she went past the intersection. This worked. Well, sort of. I saw her coming. I grabbed my guy's stuff and I got ready. I timed it perfect. She went past the intersection right before me, driving at a high rate of speed, just like the prior day. I got to the stop sign at the intersection and lo and behold, there were 2 more vehicles right behind her that I had to wait for. Now, these other 2 vehicles were not in as much of a hurry as she was, so I was quite a distance from her the entire way into town. And just like before, when we got into town, I lost visual contact again. I get back to the office and I reach out to the client again and requested a second gator one more time. This time, the client okayed the additional resources. I knew, however, even with 2 of us, it was going to be tough, so I decided to try something new. Well, I went out and I got me one of these bad boys. This is a trail cam, folks. They run a couple $100, but it's not just a trail cam. It is a cellular trail cam. I actually have multiple cameras like this now in my arsenal. They come with different carrier services, I think. Most are AT&T or Verizon. Now, my cell phone had a weak signal out there at the top of that hill, so I got me one of these that works on my cell phone company's cellular signal. I got it set up to work with motion detection, so that way it would record for a little bit, for up to 10 seconds until after it hasn't seen any motion. I also had it set up to text me a photo from the video once it sees motion, so my hope was to set this up at the top of the hill somewhere, and every time a car goes by, I would get a text, and we would have about a 10-minute warning when she was on her way. Now, I got up nice and early, and I went out there traipsing around 4 in the morning in the dark in the middle of the night, and I found a good fence post to strap this to, watching down the road towards her residence. We got all set up, one of us at that spot where I was the day prior, and the other further down the road a mile from town. The idea was to try to get in front of her this time and control her speed a little bit. We're all set up. Here comes the texts, one after another, all morning long. It seems the motion detection was a little sensitive, and every time the grass moved, I got a text. Every time a bird flew by, I got a text. But you know what? Every time a car drove by, I got a text. Now, about the same time as the previous day, I get a text, and there is a photo of what I believed to be my subject's car. We are all set and ready to go. Here she comes. I get in front of her, and away we go. As we approach town, the other gator comes in behind her, and the follow is all set up. That day, we followed her to her new place of employment. Imagine that. Getting workers' comp insurance and working at the same time. The client was ecstatic, to say the least. We had one more day to go out and do. On that next day, I went out early again, and I readjusted the camera. This camera will stay running for 6 to 8 weeks, folks, so I wasn't worried about going back to get it right away. I was also able to log in with the software and stop the text alerts while we were not working. The readjustment that I made was I pointed the camera up the road, the direction she would be going. I had noticed most of my video, I just got a glimpse of the very front of her vehicle as it passed by. When I turned the camera around, I got longer video shots of the vehicles as they drove away. I decided to leave the sensitivity on high too. I figured I would rather get 100 false alarms and then see when my subject is coming than never get alerted when she is coming.